Good morning, parents. I'm Valerie Abrahamian with Advocates for Angels, and this is my Monday morning Facebook Live. So today's Facebook Live is going to be pretty serious. The gravity that we're looking at right now in terms of our children's education for the 2020-2021 school year is at risk. In fact, all of education is at risk right now. General education kids and special education kids, their education is being systematically dismantled. In terms of our kids on IEPs, IDEA is at risk right now of being dismantled. IDEA is not being implemented, is not being adhered to. Districts feel that they're not obligated to implement the IEP or adhere to IDEA regulations. And that is what we're facing for the new year. So right now in California, which most of you parents know where I am, the governor has pretty much shut us back down. We're in complete lockdown again. And he is really recommending that school districts do not reopen. Now, some school districts were going to reopen, but as in terms of several, CNUSD being one, they were going to reopen. And as of Friday night at 8:30, we received a letter stating that they are not going to reopen. So now, just to give you an idea of the flip-flopping and the very weak leadership, in about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they were going to reopen for the first 3 weeks of school, and no, they were going to stay closed. See, I can't even keep up because they flip-flop so many times. The first decision was they were going to remain closed for the first 3 weeks of school until they could figure out and train the teachers on remote learning. And then they were going to talk about reopening after the first 3 weeks of school. Then he said, we're going to reopen in full, and then parents had the right to choose remote learning. Now we're back to we're closed, and we are not reopening the school buildings. So that's what's happening in that district. Very similar stories in other school districts in California. I know lots of the same stories are going on throughout the country. But nevertheless, I've been in contact with advocates and attorneys across the nation. Everybody's saying the same thing. IDEA is not being enforced. Districts are using excuses like, well, we're in a national pandemic right now. We weren't expecting this. We're not prepared. We aren't able to implement the IEP, which is in violation of federal law because, as everybody knows, and as I've been saying since March, Secretary DeVos did not waive IDEA. IDEA remains in effect, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Nothing is waived. The only thing that is kind of loosened a bit is the assessment timelines, but assessments still must move forward, but there's a bit of flexibility on the timelines. So that is where we're at right now. And parents, if you don't know how to hold your local school district accountable to meeting the needs of your child's education, special education program, implementing your child's IEP, your IEP will not be implemented. Your child will not receive an education coming up in August or September, whenever your school district opens up. They are not giving clear guidelines or mandating teachers to get on and provide virtual instruction and actual teach live classrooms, teach instruction. The teachers, many teachers are just planning on a videotaping a lesson and sending home the same thing you got in March, April, May, and June, a bunch of work for your child to complete. And maybe you're going to get a video now of some instruction. But there's no strict mandates or requirements for teachers to teach every day in a virtual academic instruction model. So you can imagine what will happen is the really good teachers that their life is education, they love teaching and they want to see their children succeed, will get on and provide regular and consistent virtual instruction, where the other teachers that are fine with only providing a video once a week or offering office hours for someone to ask a question about a bunch of work that they sent their either virtually sent their child or sent it through email or however they give the child to do or the student to do work, and then they're on their own. It's basically independent study is what it is. There'll be many of those teachers that do that. Now, there, of course, there's, I have lots of friends that are teachers. I have lots of friends that are service providers. And there's so many amazing teachers and so many amazing service providers. But then on the other hand, you have teachers and service providers that are not going to provide what they should be providing because, again, the school districts, the superintendents, and the admins at the top of the chain in the school district command are not setting clear leadership guidelines on, first of all, training teachers with fidelity on technology and how to provide good virtual remote learning education. So, I talked to one of my friend teachers just the other day, and she said, Valerie, I've been on all summer long training and teaching myself, going to Zoom meetings and webinars, teaching myself how to do this because she's, a little bit older, and she said, I don't know technology and I had to learn from square one, and she's the best teacher that I know. And she said, I worked 60-hour work weeks throughout the summer so that when this happens, she said, because I knew it was going to happen, I'm ready to teach my kids. And she's a special education teacher. So I am not bad-mouthing teachers, and I know that there's a difference, then that it's not all the teacher's fault. It absolutely is not. That it comes down from leadership. Leadership needs to support their teachers, train their teachers, and give them the skills and the tools they need to provide an equitable remote learning model. And then there are going to be the teachers that skate by with not doing what they should be doing for our kids and receive their full paycheck in a remote learning model. So the first thing I want to tell you parents is you need to get a device for your child. Comment moderation not set. Okay, I guess I do want to do that. So parents, you have the right, and you should be receiving a device for your child. Every child on an IEP should have their own device. If you do not have your own device, please immediately today get with your local school district and request your device for your student. They have to have their own device. They should not be learning off of your personal device, their siblings' device that they got from the school district. Every student on an IEP should have their own device. And then if you have other children, then those other students should also have their own device. So in California, the governor said every student is to receive their own device. So parents, please, you're not going to get it if you don't demand it. So you can't just sit back and say, well, they said that every child was supposed to get my own device, but I didn't get one. You have to take action now here, parents. You have to take the driver's seat and get into action mode. Because if you just sit back and allow them to do what they're going to do, you're not going to get anything for your child. This is the time parents are going to have to step up and learn to advocate. It's for years, I've been advocating for 23 years now. And so my daughter Chanel was born in 1991. And she had the diagnosis of autism and seizure disorder by the time she was 3 years old. The UCLA doctors told me that Chanel would never read, she would never write, she would never talk, and she would never be successful in school. And my local school district, which was Corona Norco Unified School District, recommended that I place my daughter in a severely handicapped class. And I refused to do that. It was an autism, quote, quote, autism classroom. And I refused to do that because even though I was a brand new mom, young mom, and knew nothing about autism, knew nothing about special education, when I went and I looked at that class, I realized, and I knew in my heart that that was wrong. That why are you segregating these kids like this? Doesn't look like a regular classroom. They had low expectations. They weren't expected to do anything. They were treated not equally. They weren't receiving education or curriculum. They were basically pretty much treated like not the rest of the children. I'm just going to put it that way. So I said I refused, and immediately I started learning how to advocate. I started learning what my rights were. I started studying special education law. I scoured the web, reading for years on how to protect my rights for my daughter. My daughter never was placed in that class. She was always placed in a general ed classroom. My daughter was the first child in the CNUSD to have the diagnosis of autism and seizure disorder in a general education classroom. She was the first child in inclusion. It's called an inclusion model, and she was the first child. Back then, this was in 1994, 95. They had no clue what inclusion was. We were just learning about it. TASC and TASH and all of the advocacy organizations, we were just learning how to do inclusion, what that meant, what did that look like, how to include a child with a disability in a general ed class. Because it was only back in 1973 that President Ford signed IDEA into law. So Chanel continued to stay in the general ed class until, and pretty much fully included. She sometimes had an RSP, a resource support program class, to support her to access the curriculum throughout high school. And my daughter did learn to read, she did learn to write, and she did learn to talk really well, even though she was nonverbal until she was 8 years old. She only had echolalia as her communication. So by the time she graduated with a high school diploma, just like every other student graduates with a high school diploma. She took every single class that every other child that graduates took. And passed it with flying colors. In fact, she was graduated with honors. So I'm telling you that story, parents, because this is what the school district will do to our children if you don't know your rights, if you don't have high expectations for your child, if you don't hold them accountable to providing what your child needs to reach their potential and to have equality and to promote diversity in our school system, because our special ed system is broken and it doesn't work correctly. It doesn't work for the benefit of our child. It works for the benefit of the system, the school system, which is a bureaucratic institution run by a hierarchy of power, starting at the top with the district administrators and flowing down with our child at the bottom of the pyramid. And we as the parents are not even a part of that pyramid because we're not in the system. We are outsiders and we are treated as outsiders. However, IDEA says we are equal IEP team participants, even though they don't treat us like one. And that's why you, parents, need to learn how to implement your power and find your voice and learn how to become an equal IEP team participant. Understand what your rights are and how to protect your rights. So that is why I'm so passionate, parents, about helping you to do just that, to not let them dismantle IDEA, because if that is exactly what's going to happen if we continue to go down this road and parents don't learn how to find their voice and stand up against the dismantling of IDEA, which is our parent rights to be equal IEP team participants and have our child's needs met. So, advocates and attorneys across the nation are saying that if at any time you work with an advocate or an attorney, it is now. Because if you sign an IEP, your IEP they are going to change your IEP, parents. They're going to change it. They're going to decrease your services. They're going to say that they can't implement your child's physical therapy or occupational therapy or whatever service that they decide they're going to write that they can't provide, because we're in this unprecedented situation of a remote learning model and in a national pandemic. That is a lie. That is a violation of federal code. But if you don't know that, you're going to allow them to diminish your child's needs. Your child still has the same needs as they did before the pandemic. They still should have the exact same IEP implemented and in force. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you trust them, if you go in and expect them to do what's right, that is not what is going to happen. If you have any, thoughts about having them make up what your child was not provided in March, April, May, and June, whether it be services, whether it be academic instruction, all of that IEP, education and services and progress your child would have made in March, April, May, and June, the district really owes you that, because they didn't implement your child's IEP and they didn't educate your child and they didn't provide those services. And the law says that they must. So they must look at the progress that your child would have made had your IEP been implemented and determine how they're going to make that up for you. If you don't know that, and if you don't know how to ask for it, by writing legal letters and emails, making those requests, following up, having an IEP meeting, holding them accountable during an IEP meeting, having them write you a prior written notice, which is a PWN, and then following up with their denial when they say they won't do it with a compliance complaint, you won't be able to hold your local school district accountable. So these are the things that I am teaching parents in my monthly membership. I'm teaching parents all of those things I just said, how to do those things. I have the forms, the letters, the scripts, the fill in the blank emails, and teaching parents how to write compliance complaints, because now as the rubber meets the road, parents, either you're going to be able to hold your local school district accountable to meeting the needs of your child, or your child will not be educated. And that's where we're at. So the parents who decide to take action and learn how to advocate and take the time and invest the time needed to commit to learning these things and doing it, then you will have a chance to see your child be educated to reach their potential. If I had not learned all those years and done the work that it needed to take, I read tons of books, went to every webinar and conference I could go to, was trained to become a professional advocate. If I hadn't taken those steps, then I would have never been successful in fighting the district year after year after year when they wanted to place my daughter in the special education severely handicapped class. I didn't just win that one year in 1993 or four. That wasn't the only year I won. I won the next year, the next year, the next year, until Chanel graduated high school in her senior year, because every year I had to fight once again to keep her in that same program. Because that's what they do. As you know, at an annual, they can bring up new things. They can change your child's IEP. They can decrease services. They can do whatever they want to do at an annual. So I had to learn how to continue to hold them accountable to providing a full inclusion program for my daughter to remain in that kind of general ed or for full inclusion program, and to continue to receive the services she needed to support her to access the general education curriculum. So So parents, we know that what we're looking at right now is we're looking at two options. We're looking at either, I don't know where you are, what district you're in, or what state you're in, but we have basically two options. Either your school district is going to close completely and you're going to be on a full remote learning model, or they are going to open up and they're going to offer you parents that want a remote learning model. So those are our two options. And I've talked about this before, but I think it's important to review it again in this Facebook Live so parents are fully informed on what we're facing. And here we are, the middle of July, and most school districts have not trained their teachers with fidelity so teachers feel confident and educated and moving forward with providing an equitable distance learning program. Most teachers I talk to say, no, we're not supported and we're not trained. And now here we are in this situation 2 weeks before schools are opening. So the option to have school buildings open, as I've talked about this before, it basically looks like a dystopian regime, or like they're in the army or a military school. That's what it's going to look like, parents, if they open schools and we go to school. I've talked about this before. So our child's social skills will not be implemented. They are not going to progress in their social skills. Why? Because they're going to all have masks on. They're all going to be social distance 6 feet apart. The chairs and the desks in the classrooms are going to be situated 6 feet apart. They are going to have partitions, many districts will have plastic partitions around their desks. Now in California, the kiddos don't have to wear masks for 3rd grade and under. They don't have to wear masks, but the children older must wear masks. They are going to, if they do have lunch or recess, they are going to place the child in bubbles of groups of 5, and the groups of 5 have to be 6 feet apart. And so they're going to be in little bubble sections if they're in groups, if they're in recess or lunch. But most districts are just going to say we can't deal with that. And how are they going to supervise and oversee that kids don't remain 6 feet apart at recess or lunch? Really, I mean, we know that's insane to even think. So most districts are going to choose to keep the kids in a self-contained class, meaning they are not going to leave their class. Once they get in that class, they're going to remain there for the entire school day, and they are going to eat lunch in the classroom. So again, what about our kids that need movement? They need their body to move in order for them to learn, because we know that body movement in terms of occupational therapy, in terms of physical therapy, in terms of the neurological taking in information and organizing of the brain, for them to learn, they have to move their bodies. That's why so many kids have to get up and take a break every 20 minutes or every half hour. Or we've built in the break times. What is going to happen to our kids that need to move their bodies if they're in a self-contained classroom? They're going to have regular temperature checks on the school grounds. They're going to have mandatory hand washing throughout the day. They are going to have specific drop-off and pickup times that are restricted. So they're going to be small groups come at a certain time so that they don't have a big crowd of kids coming in at the same time or leaving at the same time. They're going to have the hallways are going to have one-way traffic with arrows that they all walk one way down the hallways, so that kids aren't passing each other in the hallways and getting too close, and it's mayhem in the hallway. It's going to be kind of like walking in a row down the same lane in the hallway. So it sounds pretty much like a military school, doesn't it? So, what is going to occur with the mental health of our kids in this kind of environment, in this type of rules and regulations in school? We need to think about that. Everybody's talking about that. How is this going to affect our children's mental health? How is this going to affect our children's social and emotional well being? It is going to increase the anxiety for our kids. We know that because our kids have a hard enough problem following the rules and understanding the social, interactions on a regular basis in a normal, typical day, much less this very foreign, rules being instilled and placed upon our kids that are completely crazy for all of us. So that is what the option is if schools, for those schools that will reopen. For remote learning, services are going to be limited when in group sessions. So if your IEP says you have speech and language twice a week in a group session for 20 minutes, many districts are saying, well, we can't provide that, so we have to take that off the IEP because we can't have your child on a group session with other children's faces because that's a breach of confidentiality. Baloney. We've been providing through health services, virtual services, the whole time since school closure. They've been providing virtual services way even before the shutdown. That's not true. So, but many districts are doing that, and parents are believing it, and parents are allowing them to remove group sessions off their services on the IEP. Many districts, service providers are not providing virtual services at all. They're just saying, well, we're in the virtual service mode and I can't provide virtually. That's baloney too. We have been, as I said, speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Physical therapy, I haven't seen. That's going to be very difficult because physical therapy is of course, working with the child's mobility and balance and things like that. So PT is the only thing that's going to be very, very questionable. But I have seen APE, Adaptive Physical Education. I was on a webinar and they were showing how they're providing APE in a virtual model. And it's through the actual APE teacher was live on there, and he had the kid standing up with his ball and he was instructing the child with the ball live through the virtual model. So I've seen APE doing it. So really, there's really no excuse for service providers not to be providing live virtual therapy sessions individually as well as in a group model. So many children cannot access virtual learning. They just can't do it. So many of our kids with autism are going to have a very hard time sitting in the chair, seeing their teacher or their speech pathologist or service provider on a screen and understand that they're teaching them, that they're talking to them, that they're giving them a session. So some kids are going to catch on. Other kids are going to have a transition in understanding that and moving into that kind of a model. And other kids maybe will never be able to get value or educational benefit out of that. In those cases, then you should be bringing that up to your local school district and having that conversation in an IEP meeting and asking them how they're going to address that. It's their responsibility to make sure your child receives educational benefit toward their goals, parents. So you turn it around. It's not your problem. It's their problem. It's not your child's fault. It's the school district's responsibility to think of a way how they're going to make sure your child progresses towards their goals. We also have that, the same situation. Many parents are very concerned with the fact that they work outside the home. How are they going to be home to assist their kids to access the curriculum virtually? They're going to have to hire in childcare. They might have to hire in a tutor. That's extra finances on that family. General ed students, we already know, have regressed 50% regression in math, 30% regression in reading. It's already happened. That was a while ago, so I'm sure it's even increased since now. This is since then. General ed kid. This is general ed kids. So if general ed kids have regressed that much, then that means special ed kids have regressed even further, because special ed kids are already behind and learn slower than general ed children. So as I said, the good news is that IDEA remains in effect. General ed kiddos, moms, they don't have any recourse, guys. They don't have federal law to stand on to say, you, school district, you must teach my child. You must do these things in order for my child to learn. You must get teachers, general ed teachers, you must get on and teach virtual learning and virtual instruction online if schools remain closed. They don't have any law that tells them they can say that. But we do. We do, parents of children on IEPs. You have IDEA, federal law that you can stand on, that you can quote, that you can make sure your school district enforces and implements your child's IEP. But if you don't know that, if you don't know how to use that, if you don't know how to hold them accountable, then it's meaningless. So that's why I have, again, been offering the parent membership, monthly membership, to teach parents how to do that. So let me talk a little bit about the monthly membership. So it's going to close when I get a certain amount of parents, because I'm not going to go over probably 50, because I want to be able to work with every parent and give them answer their questions and give them the advocacy time they need when I have my weekly live calls with them, when I assist them in writing a compliance complaint, writing a letter, preparing for their IEP meetings, how to write a parent agenda, your agenda for your IEP meeting, what to do at your IEP meeting, how to say, I don't accept that my IEP meeting is only going to go for 60 minutes. I want it to be 2 hours, because 60 minutes, we're not going to get anything done. And then you're going to have to wait another month to come back and reconvene. And it delays and delays and delays. So basically teaching you your rights and holding your hand and helping you to hold them accountable to enforce IDEA. So I'm going to close the registration at a certain membership amount. So please make sure that you join before that happens, because we've got not very much time left before school starts, parents. And as I've been saying on all my Facebook Lives, is ask for your IEP now. Because if your IEP does not have, you don't get on the list to having your IEP held, they're going to have thousands of requests for IEP meetings when school reopens, whether it reopens virtually or reopens in the school building. They're going to have so many IEPs to make up, because remember, most school districts in March, April, May, and June said, we're waiving our IEPs, parents. We're not going to give you your annual or your transition or your triennial, because we're in an unprecedented situation, and so we're going to waive it. That was a really great decision, because now when school reopens, they're going to have to make up all those IEPs that they didn't have. Or they're just not going to make them up at all, because parents won't know that that's a violation, a timeline violation to hold your IEP. They can't just waive an IEP, parents, because guess what? IDEA wasn't waived, like I continue to say. That's a violation of federal law. But I'm sure they'll get away with it with lots of parents that don't know that that is a violation of federal law, and that they have to give you your annual or your transition or your whatever it was IEP in March, April, May, or June. If you ask for an IEP today, they have to give you your IEP within that timeline according to your state mandates, timeline mandates. In California, it's 30 days. So why would you ask for an IEP meeting now? Because first of all, they're going to most likely what they're doing in most districts is they're calling IEP meetings now and making parents come because they want to change your IEP, parents. They want to change it. They want to decrease services. They want to change the model from the school building to now it's virtual. And they're going to write in specific terminology that is going to release their obligation to implement your child's IEP. It's a loophole that they're going to use. And if you allow them to do that to you, then you're allowing them to fail to implement your child's IEP and not be obligated to make sure your child continues to learn. And that's what you'll be signing. So again, parents, if you don't know what you're signing, if you don't know what that language is that they're writing in there, I highly recommend you do not sign your IEP that they're going to call, that they're going to rewrite for you, because now we're in the remote learning mode. Most school districts are not going to open, and now they got things down. Before it was a shock, and everyone was floundering, no one knew what to do, and it was all a big confusion and basically a huge SHIT show, right? That's what it was, basically, across the nation. So now they have a plan, and their plan is to rewrite IEPs to make sure that they are no longer obligated to implement your IEP, and that's what they're going to do. So parents, please don't sign it. Please make sure you get assistance from an advocate on what you're signing, how to disagree, how to dissent to the IEP, and even go back and look at what they didn't give you before and the fact that they need to make up some of that they didn't give you before. Okay, so that is where we're at today. Again, your choice matters, parents, and how you're going to move forward from this day forward. We're getting close to the first day of school reopening. What you choose today is going to matter how your child's education is going to be provided to you in the 2020-2021 school year. Because if you just allow them to move forward with their plan, then your child is not going to receive an education on an IEP. And they're going to continue to regress like they did in March, April, May, and June. And they're not going to have their IEP implemented or receive their services. So, I just really, I encourage and I urge parents to take a stand to uphold diversity, equality, and social justice to ensure your child's civil right to be educated is honored. Our children have the right to be educated, parents. We cannot allow this situation to dismantle IDEA and to trample all over our rights and our child's rights to be educated. If they are educating general ed students, then they must educate special ed students as well. That's what the law says. It says if whatever provisions they are offering to the general ed kids virtually, they must offer equal to the children on IEPs. Just remember that, because that's not happening. So, the social and civil rights abuse, it really triggers me, and it triggers me big time, because why are children on IEPs, why are they less than? Why do they not deserve an education like every other general education student? Why are they not held to high expectations like all other general ed kids are just expected to learn? They're expected to graduate. They're expected to be able to learn whatever the curriculum is. There's no ceilings put upon them. No, well, they're never going to be able to do this, or they're never going to be able to do that. And they're held down in these self-contained classrooms, or these special ed classrooms, and they're given goals that are below their ability levels. And I could go on and on. But that's, why I'm so passionate about equal rights for our kids on IEPs. And as well, you should be, parents, because your child is amazing. Your child has strengths and abilities and gifts and talents to work on, to develop, to look at for job skills for training when they graduate high school and go into the job force, and independent skills for them to look at to live independent, productive, wonderful, happy lives. If they don't get an education, none of those things are going to happen. If they don't get an education, they're not going to be reach their potential or have skills that they developed to be able to hold a job and have productive employment. So, it's been such a blessing for me over the past 23 years to work with so many hundreds of families to help those children and to support the moms and to coach the moms through all of these kinds of situations and to show them that how to step into their power, how to learn to speak at IEP meetings, what the law says and how the law gives us equal rights to anyone else sitting around the table at our IEP meeting. And when moms tell me that they are so grateful that they found me and that how much I helped them and their child to reach their potential, that what other job could be as better than that? It's just so incredible and so amazing that I'm able to do for so many other kids what I was able to do for my own daughter, Chanel. And don't they deserve it? They deserve it. These kids work so hard. I have never seen kids work so hard as these kids on IEPs to reach their potential and to learn when they have the support and the right curriculum that they need to be able to learn. I mean, special ed really does work when everybody works together as an IEP team for the benefit of the child. It really does work. It's takes some doing to get there, and everybody's got to come together and we need to take care of some things before we get to that place. But it is possible to get to that place because I've done it over and over again over the past 23 years. So thank you, parents, and I hope that you're going to make a decision today to take action and to make sure you get your child's device. Make sure you contact your district right now to make sure your child has their device for the upcoming school year. And please, parents, like and share this video to other parents of kids on IEPs. This is important information. We need to work together here, parents, to make sure that that our rights are not dismantled at this time. We need to stand and work together at this time. So please, let's stand up together. Let's protect our rights and protect IDEA. So thank you, parents, and I will see you next Monday for my Facebook Live. Take care, everyone.